Star Trek, the ultimate franchise. These are the voyages of 3 veteran Trekkies, Rich, Ian, and Toby. Their ongoing mission? To explore the vast Star Trek universe, to seek out new perspectives and fresh debates, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. Beyond the Final Frontier.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Final Frontier, a Star Trek podcast. I'm your host, Rich Matthews, and as ever, I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Mr. Ian Spelling.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Toby Weidman.
Hello.
Today's episode is a special episode. We have a guest this time, and, well, this is somebody who doesn't really need an introduction as such because she's Star Trek royalty, the highest level of actor and writer and general personality within the franchise. So please say hello to Nana Visitor.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you, Rich. I'm glad to be here.
I hope you take compliments well, because given that the theme for this episode is our favourite women of Star Trek, something tells me that you might have to stomach some more gushing compliments as we go.
We will be blowing smoke up your ass like you've
boy.
never had smoke blown up your ass.
Oh, boy. Well, Ian, I've been interviewed by you before, so how can you say
You
that?
know from smoke. Yes, I know.
I know there's smoke.
As ever, it's our favourites, and there's no real particular order for these, just for structure. So while we have listed them, I've certainly numbered them, getting this down to 5 was incredibly hard. But it was, again, an interesting exercise because if anyone, and I recommend anyone who hasn't read Nana's book, Open a Channel, A Woman's Trek, available at all good booksellers. Use Amazon if you must, but, we like independent bookstores, is absolutely filled with wonderful characters. But they're also very much a reflection of their time. And I think our choices talk to that. And I know that while it's favourite, that also to some degree does include best. So as ever, before we kick off and we have a guest, we'll just ask Nana a very particular question. What was your first experience of Star Trek?
My first experience of really it being a part of the material of my life was when I was a chorus girl on Broadway. And before the show, before my half hour where I had to be at the theater, I would eat my dinner. And I think my little black and white TV was on a box that I found on the street. And I would eat dinner and watch Star Trek. And that was my routine. And it was comforting, and it just became a part of my life.
Oh, brilliant. That's lovely. Black and white?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you didn't get the red shirt jokes for years?
No, I was making, and I thought I was living high. I was making $600 a week on Broadway.
That's not bad.
Not bad, but then taxes. I mean, New York City rents, even then.
Yeah. So, my number 5 is Jadzia Dax. Oh, see, look, they're being disciplined because you're here, Nana. They're being very calm and not laying into me because Terry is my Star Trek crush. Glibness aside, for me, the best thing about the Dax character is that it encapsulates a lot of what Star Trek is about. She and Dax character challenges traditional concepts of identity, of relationships and continuity of those, of friendships and romance, gender changes, sexual orientation. All of those things are mixed up in that character. And she was fun in retrospect as well, although the behind-the-scenes reasons aren't that fun. But the death of Jadzia proved to be very poignant and interesting and allowed that character, the legacy of the character, to be explored even more with Ezri and how that situation works. So thematically, the legacy of that death was very strong, even though I would have liked to have seen Terry carry on much longer. So yeah, that's my number 5, Jadzia Dax. One of the things I liked most about Ezri coming in was that I got to have my cake and eat it because Siddig got to, finally get together with Dax, which was pleasing because, I was a pro-Bashir from very early on, even when he was at his most callow.
I love that word, callow. It's such a good word, callow.
Well, he is the definition of callow when you meet him. Bashir is. He's not very deep,
I
is he?
think she's met him.
I believe so, that you're
Twice.
familiar.
Yes.
I'm going to give mine, but I'm going to start with my runners up real fast without going into any detail. Number one runner up for me is Jadzia Dax. After that, it's the combination of the Uhura's taking us through pretty much the history of Star Trek. So I'd go with Nichelle Uhura. I'd go with Saldana, actually, I believe she pronounces it, in the JJ movies. And I love what Miss Gooding is doing in Strange New Worlds. So there's no question about that. La'an, I think La'an's a great character, and that she's doing a fabulous job with it. Christina Chong. Hoshi from Enterprise should have been a fabulous character.
Yeah.
The bones were there to build on, and they never did until we got her in the Mirror Universe. Then Tendi is terrific. I love Tilly as a character. Edith Keeler and Wynn. Kai Wynn is great. But my number 5, again, I'm not really going in order. 1 and 2 are in order, but I'll go with the wild card here, which is Jet Reno.
Oh.
Reno knows her shit when it comes to engineering. She pushes people's buttons in a fun, entertaining way, but also be professional, do your job, know what you're doing kind of way. She cracks great jokes and insults. And most importantly, she was well utilized, which is to say that she's a spice rather than a main ingredient. And I think what they did really well with this character, and what she did as an actress with this character, is, when you don't have a lot to do, you sometimes overplay it to get the attention. And she didn't do that. And I think that works really, really well.
She's very cool. That's part of it. She's
right.
Very cool.
I thought Tig Notaro did a great job as Jet Reno. And I know we're going to see more of her. So that's exciting as well. Anyway, that's my choice.
Tobes.
My 5th spot, and this is potentially a left field choice because it's an animated character, and it's Beckett Mariner.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Tawny Newsom
She was in my
from
shortlist.
Lodex.
Yeah.
I had Tendi slightly over her.
It's, I there's a slight injustice, I think, because there are so many amazing women characters in Star Trek, and I picked a 2-dimensional character, so I'm sort of ignoring the nuance and subtlety that a live action performer brings to the role. But I really like this character, and we are picking favorites. We've said this before, but one of the key tenets of Star Trek is competent people doing competent things competently. And Beckett Mariner is not that. It's not that she's incompetent, it's just that she willfully chooses to be rebellious. And it's a punk rock characteristic that I hugely appreciate. But she's also she's governed by her own morality and friendship code, and that comes across above anything that Starfleet might put down in terms of rules and regulations. I do think she's an amalgam of characters. I can see, there's the rebelliousness of Ro. I think there's the kind of fierceness and directness of Kira. I think there's the empathy of Troy and Crusher, and I don't think she exists without Uhura.
Yeah.
But I also think she does have a distinct character. Ironically, for a 2D character, I think she's really well-rounded. I've not seen her live action performance in Strange New Worlds.
Right. Okay.
Because I've not got to that point yet.
It's fun.
So in terms of like a voiceover performance, it covers a lot of ground. Her character covers a lot of ground, from serious drama to slapstick comedy. And although essentially it's a parody show, I think there is a really strong character in there.
Well, look, Frakes directed that episode, so it's in good hands.
I'm looking forward to it. I am looking forward to it.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, Tawny was on my list as well, Beckett Mariner. I think they discovered with Ro in Next Gen that there has to be a conversation questioning the system and having the system answer to it and maybe have to rethink its positions. But that's not the one that I want to talk about first. So the one I want to talk about first is Captain Rachel Garrett, Trisha O'Neill. I love that character. She met her fate, understanding it completely, like a soldier, like someone who is grounded in purposefulness. I thought that she was dignified. I didn't see anything. It didn't matter whether she was a woman or a man. She was a captain through and through, and such a great, great example of it. And it's just who I would want fighting beside me or captaining me. So that's my first character that I really truly love.
That's my favorite single episode of Star Trek.
It's really great.
Excellent. Ooh, even though, and also, I quite like the fact she gets quite a gory, stark end. Because sometimes they pull that punch, less on DS9, but on TNG they often pulled that punch, and
Yes.
that sort of steel plate in the forehead is like, no, she's dead.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Okay, so my number 4 is Guinan, specifically Whoopi Goldberg's Guinan. Because I sort of struggle a bit with the main cast members in TNG that I find it in the same way that I grapple with the original series representation of women retrospectively. I have now in 2025 I have some similar issues with Troy and Crusher, and I guess I know too much about behind the scenes about what they were pushing for, what they weren't allowed to do, and what they wanted to do. And so but I knew I wanted TNG to be represented on my list. It had to be. And Guinan kept coming forward in my mind for a variety of reasons, but simply because her presence is effortlessly essential. She's not in it regularly. You can probably often count her appearances on your fingers, but she feels like a presence that is always on the ship, is always in 10 forward. And because it was so her sort of challenging of stereotypes in this very almost it almost took it for granted that she is who she is and she's friends with Picard. So there's these normalized interracial friendships and cross-gender friendships at the highest level on this ship, and they just are. There's nothing's drawn to that. Big things aren't made of it. But she also represents an alienness but an identifiable one that you are drawn to. Obviously, they use Whoopi's incredible charisma and profile to great effect, and knowing that she's there because of Nichelle and wanting to follow on and keep that presence on the ship adds gravitas off screen. But I just think about the first time she's the one who knows who the Borg are. Her reaction to Q in that is never fully explained initially. That whole does this thing with her hands and this omnipotent being is afraid of her. But then also just this vessel of wisdom for every character. And it was also, I think the writing staff clearly felt that they had safe hands, that they could put dialogue and conversation in that might otherwise be too on the nose for somebody else to deliver, because it was always so beautiful and wise and could move a character forward and conversations with Data in particular and Worf and those sort of elements.
Do you feel by any chance that she was a little bit like a hologram, though? Like,
Oh, that's
we had
interesting.
Vic.
Yeah,
We had Vic who was just there for everybody, but didn't require anything.
that's interesting.
And sometimes I felt like that character was the same way. Who was she? What did she want? What was her skin in the game? No idea. She was just there for everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. Although you did sort of have the nice wrinkles, like in Time's Arrow, where you see a past version of her, and she's a little bit spunkier and sassier, and a bit sort of more playful. But that is a good point. And
She's actually not on my list because I found the character too expositional.
Mm.
I thought that they brought her in when they needed to deliver some information about a species or give a little character development to the other characters. The fact that the character worked so well was on the writing and on Whoopi Goldberg. But as a character, I thought she was there to serve a specific function, which was to give information and provide a mirror to the characters, I guess.
I think that might feel more pointed because of her function in Generations, where she's in the Nexus and you kind of sort of go, that felt a little bit clunkier in terms of, and she definitely performs that function in that film, where she is an expositional tool for Picard, and and even then an internalized version, because she's there and she's not, and she's and it's sort of that odd thing. So I do agree with that, and I think the idea of it being like Vic is an interesting one, because of course Vic came after Guinan, and so it was interesting to think if that informed. I'd love to know if that informed like Ira's thinking about Vic and the team then, in terms of, do we need a Guinan-like character? Because I know that the original character is meant to be that slightly blank slate that a barkeep represents, the person you will go to and share, and she certainly performed that function, but equally transcended that cliche. For me, that doesn't reduce how she normalized a lot of things for me at the age that I saw TNG. And I think Toby said last episode, he grew up in rural Shropshire in England. I grew up in rural Herefordshire in England. And seeing her there in that context, and being best friends with Patrick Stewart, an Englishman, well, French, but we know, really resonated with me and stayed with me. Ian?
I'm going with 7 of 9. I'm a little torn about 7 of 9 as a character on this list. 7 and Jerry Ryan were added to bring in some oomph, some sex appeal to Voyager, to replace a character who many people consider the opposite of those points. So we got a buxom blonde, we got that skin-tight bodysuit, but a funny thing happened. A great, great character was created and developed, and it shed light on the Borg as a species, which I thought was important for the franchise, obviously, because this character is carried over to the other shows and movies. She challenged Janeway, that kind of mother-daughter dynamic that they had, and she brought out Janeway's maternal instincts as well, which I thought was important for that character. She helped humanize the Doctor, speaking of holograms. And then we got this whole other chapter of her story in Picard. Again, the character in Picard was added to bolster a show that needed some oomph, which I thought was interesting. But they gave us a very different 7. We got a human 7, and this was an older 7. This was a more experienced 7. This was a more politically involved 7. She's discovering her femininity with another woman here, which I thought was a great idea, not fully developed the way I would have liked for it to be developed. So she would be my choice.
Excellent. She's in my shortlist. She was just outside if it was 7, she was ironically number 7. I could kind of understand why Kate Mulgrew was a bit grumpy. I find it hard to separate that part of it for some reason with 7, probably because overtly the way she was dressed. I mean, we always know Star Trek has a history of I mean, you talked about it brilliantly, much better than I can and are in your book, about the sort of idealized male view, the soft focus, the costumes that look like they're ready to drop off, and all of those kind of things. But it felt like we'd slightly moved beyond that, especially on DS9, where they're either in uniform or even, I'm not going to claim I thought that the uniform, the Bajoran uniform, was comfortable or not, because probably not. But it equally was more utilitarian. It had those aspects, but still quite utilitarian. And the initial outfit that Jerry was wearing once she was out of her full Borg regalia just always made me think, yeah, feels a bit like 60s.
Yeah, but we got, the more things change, the more they stay the same. You had that with Jolene Blaylock on Enterprise. You had that with Alice Eve.
Even more so with that
as well. Do we really need the underwear scene with her?
No.
In the movies. So, to your point.
Yeah. Tobes.
Well, speaking of Jolene Blaylock, she's in my 4th spot, Sub-Commander T'Pol. It's interesting that you said 7 of 9, because 7 of 9 is not in my list. And I think of the 2 characters that you could probably compare would be 7 and T'Pol. Very beautiful women in skin-tight outfits. I think I enjoyed T'Pol's story more than 7 of 9. And I think that's because 7's was like, her introspection was to try and regain her humanity, which I kind of feel had been explored a little bit with Data. Whereas T'Pol's interest was that she was in a confined space with humans, and it inevitably, you know, she was a scientist as well. So she, was interested, and she hadn't had much interaction with humans before this. And I just, she was given a lot to do throughout the series. I think she is the standout character in that series for me. But I think she got to explore a lot of sides of her characters, which you think Vulcans are logical and don't really get to do that stuff. But I think she really did. And I do think that the humanity, rubbed off on her. I liked that the relationship with Trip was like off and on. I thought that worked really, really well, because it actually gave, something for her to do as well. And, there was a different aspect that was explored there. And yeah, I just, for me, T'Pol just slightly is of more interest to me than Seven, which I always saw Seven and Janeway as a bit more of a partnership, whereas I think T'Pol is very much her own separate thing.
Interesting. Really interesting. Nana?
Well, for me, T'Pol, when you go back to our original Vulcan, one of the wonderful things about him, and one of the wonderful things, most important things about humans, is a sense of curiosity. And I don't feel like the writing gave T'Pol a chance to be curious about what she saw. Spock was always like, fascinating, and tell me more. And so that we could look at humanity and go, yeah, why do we do that? It was a wonderful way to look at ourselves. And I felt that to Paul's character was given this attitude and dialogue, not by Jolene. I'm sure I've read a lot of what she said, and she wasn't pleased with her opportunities, it seems. There was judgment instead. There was almost disgust that she felt for the humans, certainly at first. And I just missed that sense of intellectual curiosity
Hmm.
in the character. And I, as well, have 7 of 9 on my list, and
I
these
knew I
aren't
liked you, Nana.
I thought, just like Marina Sirtis's character was an entryway for little girls into sci-fi, 'cause she was a pretty princess, and they could want to emulate her and start to watch the show through that door. I feel that 7 of 9, as I said in the book, was a Trojan horse.
Mm.
Yeah, it brought people in to watch, guys to watch, but then they saw someone with really strong boundaries, someone who would go, "Yeah, you might want me, but that's not what I'm feeling," instead of this need to, be pleasing or likable, or the gratification that someone wants her. That just simply meant nothing to her unless she was interested. Loved that part of her. I saw the Janeway, and I saw it as, so I thought it built beautifully, because as a parent, you're first a caretaker, and you have to build boundaries for a child and say, "No, I'm gonna keep you safe, I'm gonna caretake." And then there's a certain point where you have to transition to being a mentor. You can't take care of them. You have to let them fail. And that that transition happened in their relationship, and I thought it was a beautiful thing to see. And when it became a mentorship, it was a blueprint for women, a new way to think about each other. Instead of, there's one chair at the table and we're gonna fight over it, and if you're succeeding, I'm losing.
Mm.
If I'm climbing the ladder, I'm gonna pull you up with the knowledge that I have. And I thought Janeway did that with 7 of 9, and I love seeing that.
Just to follow up real quick, I don't want to take up more time on this. But Toby, it's funny. T'Pol is not anywhere near my list.
Mm.
Your memories of that character being as developed, I really couldn't tell you anything. about development of that
She
character.
for
I
me,
thought
she
that
had
was a missed opportunity.
I don't disagree that that definitely could have done more, and I would have liked to have seen more. I know that they were if they had got a 5th season, they were potentially going to explore the fact that she might have had a Romulan father, which would have been really interesting and would have
Yeah.
explained a lot more
Well-
about how emotional
They
reactions.
never did pull the trigger on a half Romulan, half Vulcan, did they, with Savick either?
No, but I liked. I thought she. There was the whole stuff with the Vulcans and the Vulcan reset, which was really interesting. I think it really came to the fore in season 3 and 4. I think where she got to explore some stuff, with the death of her mother, and there were some very strong episodes for her. I do 100% understand why she wouldn't be in some people's lists.
Yeah.
It might be the fact that I was editor of the magazine when Enterprise was on, and so I think I like Enterprise more than you guys, from what I understand of it, from what has been said before, but. Not to say that it wasn't problematic, but I just I did really like her character, and I thought her playing of the character was really good, and yeah, it sticks out in my mind.
Nana, what's your number 3?
Jess Bush as Nurse Chapel. I love her performance. I think that she is smart, wild, truly, truly interested and curious about what her work is, and has this wild hair up her butt too that makes her just delightful. There are some people who can follow Nichelle in terms of a sense of responsibility about what Star Trek is as an actor and what you carry forth and the relationships you form. And I really think that she's someone with that gravitas and intellectual. She's she's just a really interesting woman. And so that she's playing this character the way she plays it, it's Nurse Chapel and it's Jess Bush.
I love the character as well. She's not on my list just because I thought they started to fumble the football a little bit with her interactions with Spock. I just thought all of a sudden she turned on him.
I
And
have not seen that.
okay.
Oh,
After I
spoiler.
finished the book, I took a big hiatus from watching Star Trek, so I have not seen that. It's the first 2 seasons that I go, "I love this
Okay.
character."
All right. So
Okay, so I'll put that in parentheses. During the first 2 seasons, I love Nurse
Mhm.
Chapel.
and I'm sure they'll find a way to deal with it. Obviously, she's got to move on. But I just thought they pushed and
I
prodded the
know.
Spock Chapel thing in the
I
wrong
know.
direction. For me personally, you guys may or may not agree,
No,
but
she doesn't come out of it
as likable as she was, and
Ugh.
don't get me wrong, has nothing to do with the performance, right? The actor
No,
is
no, no,
playing the
no,
role
no.
that's
I
written.
mean, so much of this, and to go back to you, Toby, I have to say, I talked to women who found T'Pol incredibly important to them as
Mm.
women in systems where they were the only woman and they had to deal with men
Mm.
such as on Enterprise. It gave them strength. It gave them, so, these characters are there for everyone to pick, and I love the diversity of all of
Yeah.
them, and I
Yeah.
totally, understand why T'Pol was very important.
I think you can feel the Aussie in Jess Bush as Chapel. It gives her a bit of energy, which really plays to that grit. And I think the other thing with the whole season 3 Spock stuff is we're starting to edge into that dangerous fan territory where you're like, no, this is messing with canon.
Couldn't care less about canon. I just
Well, you are in the minority in the
let me phrase that. In this
fandom.
instance, I couldn't care less about that. That's not my difficulty with what they've done with the character in season 3.
Oh,
Let's
I hate to hear this. I hate to hear this, but that's, That's art, right? That's
Yeah.
storytelling. Sometimes it goes off the rails.
I'm with you, Nana. I've only watched season 1 of Strange New Worlds so far, and I've really enjoyed her performance so far. So I was very disappointed when these guys mentioned season 3. I was like, oh no.
Shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. But my number 3, actually specifically, is Strange New Worlds related, although it's 2 things. So my number 3 is Uhura, who first was number 1. But then I sort of did a bit of soul searching that maybe that was more historic rather than my own personal favourites. So I sort of so I've narrowed it down because obviously there's wealth of material, and she's one of the characters has been played by 3 different actors. And I've said this before on the podcast. I particularly like what Celia Rose Gooding is doing with her on Strange New Worlds. I love she's effervescent. She's been given that extra bit of runway that Nichelle was never given, and yet is honouring what she did. And that brings me to my very narrow example that I'll give for what the Uhura I love, and that's Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. Because I really love that she's given a little bit more agency, a little bit more playfulness, a little bit of more authority. And it's one of the times where I think the character most reflected what she'd been through. That she was an officer, she was senior in Starfleet at this point, and the fact that she took a dead end job just for the mission to allow Kirk and co to escape to steal the Enterprise. But I just think she gets to be lively and engaged and direct in a way sometimes Uhura was navigated away from for a variety of contextual reasons, which we know about in terms of when both the series and the films were made. And I think that's what I see, particularly in Celia's performance, is that element, that little bit more. I don't want to say liveliness, not right, because Nichelle was always glittering with life, and it was one of the things which set her apart on the bridge. But it is that sense of self, I think, is probably what it is, of independence, of being a rounded individual. And in Search for Spock, there's hardly any time. And one of the things that we've commented about this in general for the supporting crew in the films, especially with Walter and George, that they do worlds of work with very little in the movies especially, and they really sell it, and she really excels in that. And I think that, as fun as she is in Star Trek 4, and as crucial as she is in Star Trek 6 especially, there's something about her and the way Leonard probably directed her in Star Trek 3 that really helped her to shine. And you could almost feel another actor giving another actor a chance to show more who they were. And that's what's informing what I'm seeing now. It was also there in Zoe Saldana's performance, but that character seemed less true to Uhura to me. Again, that's the Spock of it. So there seems to be an issue with people trying to do things with Spock and women in current versions, which is interesting. But yeah, Celia Rose Gooding's Uhura, and definitely is carrying forward for me what Nichelle did, and the weight of, and you can feel that lineage, that the whole thing with Martin Luther King illustrating to Nichelle how important her being there was. And I just think about how Celia Rose Gooding is able to have fun with this in a very overt way, and yet still have that depth, that drama, that legacy. And it's just, and she had to be on my list. And as I said, first impulse was top, but ultimately, when I was a little bit more rumination, she lands very near the top. But Uhura is amazing.
And I think Celia is great, but Celia is even better.
Oh, see, I've not met her, Ian, and this is an unfair advantage.
I know. All these little things of how our names are said, and yet it's so important.
It
and
is.
Your casting and ours, especially when you were where I was watching Deep Space Nine, you saw that list and went, Sirok? No. What is it?
Did they cast them for their names? It's just in that way. One weird name after another. It's true.
Even Column, unless you know.
No, that one was always a column. I still don't. I struggle with it. Column.
My number 3 is Beverly Crusher.
Oh, cool.
Great doctor, intriguing woman, wise friend, strong mirror for the Picard character. Picard is a good mirror for her. She takes command, and commandingly so, when called upon to do so. And she had more to do with even greater consequences on Picard. I have said this repeatedly on our podcast, and obviously you probably haven't heard me say this, but for me, overall, Picard was a missed opportunity, particularly seasons 1 and 2. I just didn't think we needed the dark world of Jean-Luc. I would have preferred something go boldly somewhere. But the best thing that ever happened for Dr. Crusher and for Gates McFadden was season 3 of Picard.
Without a doubt.
I loved getting more of the character's story. I thought Gates played it to the hilt.
He did.
She had more to do in season 3 than all of her 6 seasons and all of the movies.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled. Again, I have my issues with Picard, but season 3 filled in so many blanks for so many of the characters that I cared about and the ones I felt were underdeveloped. And I thought for Marina as well, actually, she had more to do in Picard than she ever got to do on TNG. But most importantly, I thought for Gates and for the Crusher character, as a mother, as a doctor, as a friend, as a commanding person and an officer, all of it, I thought she's my number 3. No question.
I totally agree with that. That's one of the reasons that she's not on my list is the TNG of it.
And the same,
that
for me.
You could see so much in there, but it wasn't really done. And then you are right, Picard season 3. I mean, I've said this again on the podcast, was that the best thing about Picard season 3 is the TNG cast finally got a proper send-off that honoured what they'd done before, and because there was that danger of Nemesis being, and then suddenly it was just great. And Crusher in particular, Beverly, just
and they stuck the landing with the character evolutions on Picard.
But when she does the tactical thing and she says, "What, a lot has happened," it's just all of her own baggage is in that line read, and it's just great. Tobes,
my number 3 is Catherine Janeway. I don't think you can do a list of Star Trek women without her in it.
It's not crunch time yet, Tobes.
I think she's, possibly one of the most important characters in the whole of Star Trek. We mentioned Rachel Garrett. There had been captains before that, and women in news, but this specifically, it was a female captain on a state-of-the-art starship. It was the most advanced starship at the time, but also the lead of a Star Trek show, and I think she paved the way. I didn't warm to her at first. It took a little while for me to fall in love with that character. I think it was towards the end of season 1 where I finally sort of started to think yes. I'm not sure why it took that long. I maybe found her a little bit abrasive at the start. It's a really charismatic performance. Like, she holds your gaze when she's on screen. I think she brings a down-to-earth charm and a dry humor to it. I feel like she was a leader on screen, but also, really led the sort of press and media around that show as well. I did really like her relationship with Seven of Nine, but I feel like it just felt like a double bill kind of thing. That it was a pairing, that relationship for me. She's only not higher on my list because I do think there were some inconsistencies, which I think was the writing, never the performance, in terms of her decision making. Sometimes I've said it before that I feel like she's a mad son of a bitch sometimes, and I really like that about her character. But I do think sometimes she really enforces like Starfleet's regulations, and then sometimes it's like, no, we're not going to do that. And I know it's situational. I know that's because that's where she is, and she's thinking about her crew and her ship. She's got to get them home. But it was just a little bit inconsistent. But I hope you guys have got her on your list as well, because I do feel like it's just impossible not to have her on there.
I will be keeping my powder dry. So, Naj, do you want to do your number 2?
Okay, you're gonna be angry. The 3 of you are gonna be angry at me. Dr. Catherine Pulaski.
Wow.
Oh my God. Talk about left field choices. Whoa.
Go. I want to hear this, please.
Oh, well.
That's just...
Explain yourself.
I am not mad at all. Nope.
Really?
Yep.
It could be very, very personal. Just a quirk of mine that I loved that character. I started watching Next Gen for her, and that she was allowed to be grumpy, or that not allowed, she just did it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what got her kicked off too. But, when you think of the other doctors that were grumpy, the original was Bones was pretty
Yeah.
grumpy, and she just had rough edges, and I loved her for that. And I thought it was a really interesting take, and she was a woman of a certain age, not trying to look like this or that. She was simply the doctor, and I thought that was great.
She's in one of my favorite episodes, which is Elementary Day Data. And to speak to what you're saying, when she goes, fraud, absolute fraud. And it is very strong. And it's like, ooh, so interesting.
The thing was, people loved to not like the character. And
And they love Beverly too.
that became a bandwagon. And also, she suffered because a lot of people wanted, Gates back, including the cast.
Yes, there was that dynamic.
But I will say, I always thought of that character. That's why I was thrilled you mentioned it. She wouldn't have been on my list, but I get why. She was, to me, the female Jellicoe. And
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
always liked that as a character, and that we got her more than a one-shot guest appearance. And it created tension on the screen between the characters.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more. No, really cool character.
There's a symmetry to this. Kira was famously spiky, and so was Pulaski.
This is true. This is true.
Number 2. Well, brace yourself. My second is Major, then Colonel Kira Nerys.
Why?
Shut up, Ian. Let the man talk.
I'll walk you through this because I had a journey with Kira. I really like Ro, so I was a bit pissed off when I heard that Michelle Forbes wasn't coming over with O'Brien to Deep Space Nine, so there was that. I'm pretty sure I recognized you from... Were you in Dynasty?
I was on the spinoff.
On the Colbys?
I was on everything in the 80s.
I knew I'd seen you, as you've described, with big shoulder pads and...
doing some of the worst acting. Yes, that was me. No,
circumstance.
Truly.
Circumstance.
It was what we did in those soap operas.
I initially, and I've said this on the podcast before, I struggled with DS9 in general. It didn't quite get it. The level of conflict, it seemed not very Star Trek and within the main characters, and I struggled to warm to, like I struggled to warm towards Avery Brooks as Cisco, and now where I am now, the full circle is, while we make this distinction a lot between favorite and best, sometimes they coincide, but the best series was Deep Space Nine by a long way. And the way I traveled with it, and with Kira in particular as representative of that, once I realized that I was feeling the way I was supposed to feel, in a way, about the character, challenged a bit, oh gosh, she's very, she's a bit much. And then to see that grow and the way it progressed and the issues that she had to work through were just astounding. Just in the previous episode, we were talking about Duet with Harris Yulin as the watermark for acting in Star Trek. The work you both did in that episode, it was just unbelievably good and layered. And what DS9 did so much better than everything else, not to say the other shows didn't do it, but DS9 seemed to be built for layers, seemed to be built for subtext and duality and how you could be two things at once, which is, again, sort of what Dax is to a degree, but Kira, especially for an American show, to essentially be full on addressing both a terrorist, now a good guy, of one man, one person's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, a woman in a position of power who doesn't suffer fools gladly, takes no shit and makes no bones about it. And then just the fact that she became, and I'm sorry I was late to the train, but was Kira by the end, for me, embodied Roddenberry's utopian ideal more than any other character, because she went through horrors, trauma, adversity. She loved, she lost in a profound, sacrificial way with Odo, but also with Bareil, and every step of the way, Kira couldn't catch a break, even though she could take a knife hit as well as anybody on Star Trek. I know I should applaud you for the subtle emotional beats you do, but that bit in Way of the Warrior when you get stabbed by the Klingon on the bridge, like,
Yeah.
just carried on.
May I just say that was a really important moment to me because I studied what happens when people get injured. And, it's a weird phenomenon, but I read a report once that said gunshot victims started to behave more like actors in films getting shot, this very dramatic thing, rather than what actually your body does. And being knifed like that, you're not going to feel it right away. May affect your nerves and drop you to your knees, but you're going to keep going because your adrenaline, everything in your body is set to go that way. So that little bit of realism, every time I could add a truthful realism to Kira. So I love that you mentioned that. Sorry, go on.
No, it works, and because at that point you are kind of Star Trek fan is kind of going, the Klingons are meant to be stronger than humans, and then but no, there was never a question. Kira will kick the ass no matter what, and it was a great moment. Through all of that, Kira rose above it, become the best of all of us, the best of Bajor, the best of Star Trek. And that's what Roddenberry was all about: striving for more, striving to improve, striving to be better, even when you've been through hell and back. And as a character, as I said, who didn't catch any breaks, the fact that in the final episode, the final moment is a tender moment and is absolutely feels true and defiantly not stereotypical in terms of who it is. Because it's not a maternal moment. Not really. It's just a human moment.
That's right.
Absolutely love Kira. And it is, in fact, I love the character even more because I struggled with her initially. And if I had to pick a high point, no, it would be the bit when you turn around on that bed in Aran Bashir in that negligee. Good Russian accent too.
My number 2, despite the actress, is Kira. No, I'm joking. Then I love you. You're like my favorite person on the show. Kira experienced, and so did the audience, a full life with this character, a full arc on Deep Space Nine over the course of the 7 seasons. As you were saying, Rich, she evolved from rebel and terrorist to officer and soldier, from angry to at peace, or is something resembling peace for her, from loner to lover and friend and mentor. She never really lost her edge, which I thought was incredibly important for the character. I think the edge is what let her soften herself a little bit over time as she came to accept these other people, as she came to accept life on Deep Space Nine as a space station, as she came to realize that not every Cardassian is evil. There were really signposts all along that you were able to play that I thought were hugely important to the character, and your performance brought all of that out. I think there's a good blurring of the line between Nana and Kira and Nana.
True.
And I more so possibly than any of the other characters on the show, for reasons both wonderful and, of course, traumatic.
It is true to say that when you're in entertainment journalism of any kind, which so 3 of us have been to greater and lesser degrees across our lives, the thing you live in fear of is when you have to interview somebody and you don't like the work, because you want to be respectful. So it's very, very satisfying to be able to sit here and just tell you how good you were in Deep Space Nine and how wonderful the character was.
Tobe, what's your number 2?
My number 2, we have covered her, is Jadzia Dax. I should say I knew Terry Farrell because I'd seen Hellraiser 3.
Me too.
I'd liked her in that, and so I was kind of excited when she was cast in Deep Space Nine. But I didn't warm to her character initially because I just don't think they got the character, particularly early on. And I think it's as late as Blood Oath that I started to understand, and you know, it's not that I didn't like what she had been done before that, but it was that point where I felt that character was kind of really explored. And there's a really lovely scene between you and Terry in that, where you're sort of discussing about what it's like to kill someone.
Yeah.
When they started to focus the story on Jadzia and who she was, rather than trying to do the duality thing, I think that's when I started to understand her and enjoy her, and like that adventurous spirit and her curiosity, her motivations, and it was always delivered with like a little twinkle in the eye. You know, she really became a favorite of mine. Like you, I love DS9, and she is right up there as one of my favorite characters.
I really think that when they finally the shift for her came, it, because they had her saying, "I'm wise and I know everything and I've had lots of experiences," but until they activated the actor to show that instead of say it,
Mm.
we couldn't really see who Jadzia was, and it was great to show these slivers of different life experiences. Then she walked around with, I've had multitudinous lives." She didn't have to say it. She didn't have to behave as if, and I think that really allowed Terry to do what she could do with it, which was wonderful.
I rewatched Facet in preparation for doing this list, where you all got to play different aspects of her personality, well, not her personalities, but of the symbionts.
No, different hosts.
Not the symbiote. That's the same thing. The hosts, the Trills, and that was a really great episode because it gave you all something different to play with. I seem to remember you played.
I played an old woman, right?
Yeah.
I played an old woman. Probably it's funny because I probably overplayed it because now I am an old woman, and, I don't think I'm as doddery as I made her, which is, it's just to use. What are you gonna do? But even that show, I feel like, damn it, they put her under, the actor, and we're all showing all these different aspects instead of letting her do it. And when they finally let her do it, there was a power
Mhm.
to
And
it.
Terry rose to the occasion.
That kind of episode informed her character, so you understood her a little bit more.
Mm,
But there was
yeah.
lots of times before that, I just didn't buy the old man, Cisco calling her old man. That never really grabbed me. But it was stuff that informed who Jadzia was. That was the stuff that I liked, and that's why I fell in love with that character.
Do you think they needed, scenes where he was talking to the old man, like flashbacks of that relationship? And would that have mentally helped us connect her
I
to
quite liked having Renee being the first time you met Curzon, though.
Mm.
That was really good.
What needs it. Perfect Curzon. Perfect Curzon.
Because if you had because I, again, like a lot of people who come to Star Trek, I was aware of his work on Benson, and also, well, I'm sure he didn't talk about his police academy role that much, but he was in one, and so I knew him in that sort of sense. And so the Odo role seemed kind of the opposite of what I knew him for, and then to see this sort of literally merge that kind of persona with the Odo was really, really brilliant. But I think she was, for me, she was where she needed to be when Worf came into the show, in the sense that the thing which made Worf work was Dax and Worf from the beginning, even though it wasn't necessarily laid out. There was something about the way that that sort of almost sometimes naive character. Worf was very direct, very straightforward, and yes, he had layers, but it was sometimes very head on. And I loved the way that Dax navigated around that, with all her knowledge and all of her experience, and it was a lovely compliment. And I think they would have struggled from a writer's point of view to incorporate Worf as well if they hadn't had Dax more fleshed out by that point.
And she
For
was
me,
great with the batleth, let's face it.
oh, she was.
She
Yeah.
was great. She rose to all the occasions.
We had one.
Well, I think we got Nana's got one more, haven't you? I think before we get to one.
I'm going to say Lita. And some of that is informed by Ira Stephen Bear telling me that was his most successful woman character. And when he opened my eyes to it, I saw it. She really did have agency. She was really interesting. She did what I always wished, and finally they did it with Odo for my character. It was like, why do I have these hunks? That's not Kira would not care about, the outward look of the men that she's romantically involved with, and that Lita fell in love with Rom was really interesting.
Mm.
That she, like Kira with Odo, saw the soul instead of what was encapsulating it was really, really interesting. And she challenged my ideas of, I saw her as like a stripper or, Vegas showgirl. And it challenged me that she got involved in, rights, and that she got involved in the politics, and that she was right there alongside Kira, in trying to do what's right for people. So, and I love when you're challenged by your unconscious biases or conscious biases and made to look at someone twice and go, "Oh, not what I thought." And I think she's in my list for that reason.
Great choice, Nana.
That's a very good point, because I think maybe that's what I was that's my tripping up on 7. I think that's probably what I'm tripping on, that exact thing, of that I have probably struggled to get past what I'm supposed to think, why she was cast, rather than what I'm actually being exposed to. So as ever, I'm going to go away and have to introspect.
Yeah. I order this is
Leave
the
now.
prescription. The prescription for you is to go and rewatch all of Voyager. Okay.
Okay,
All
that's a
right.
pleasure. I'll happily have that away mission.
There you go.
Okay, so my number 1 is Janeway, for all the obvious reasons that has already been said, that Thomas has said as well, which in terms of, on a very basic face value, the first female captain, the first female lead of a Star Trek show. And it is worth acknowledging, though, that part of that was what was allowed to go before on DS9. There was, I think you can very clearly see a progression in terms of and I think that Janeway came to be in the way she finally appeared because of what was achieved on DS9, even those first few seasons. But crucially, I'm the opposite to Toby. I loved Kate Mulgrew in that part from the get-go. There was a bit of Katharine Hepburn in it. There was a previous captains. There was just this good humor and camaraderie, and yet, as you say, she cut through the shit really quickly when she needed to, even in that pilot. And I loved the chemistry she had with the crew. And this became even more pointed, of course. Now in the YouTube age, you can see Genevieve Bujold's first take of Janeway, and you realise how it might have gone if it hadn't been for. And in fact, she came in late. And you talk about knowing an actor, Tobes, but when they come in, I was one of the few people who's a big fan of the film Remo Williams.
Great movie.
Starring Fred Ward.
Oh, love that film.
Well, and she's in that, and she's great, and so I was like, oh, it's the military officer, crucially, from Remo Williams. So it all sort of meshed for me immediately, and I never experienced her ebbs and flows as inconsistencies, and I think we talked about this before. I feel like she acted like someone in the most extreme circumstance that we saw any captain in Star Trek. Yes, the Dominion War, of course, was a massive trauma for everyone involved, all the characters involved in that. But they were out on their own. She had to be so many different fulfill so many different roles in that position. And you know you're saying about caretaker, and Nana early on about is she was literally that for all of them.
Well, every day was the Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah, and she pulled them out of that no-win scenario so many times, so much so that it makes sense when you get to Endgame, the final episode, and she's gone a bit loopy bananas, and is going to and is determined to break all the rules and just defy every directive going, let alone the prime one, to prevent her crew suffering any longer than they had to go and do that. It just resonated so much with me, and she's an authority figure. She has to be maternal, not by choice often, but because there are so many people turn to her in that way. And yet she's mother, father, captain, caretaker, everything that she needs to be. And Kate Mulgrew rose to that challenge, an incredible weight of responsibility for everything it represented, but also leading any show like that. And I won't claim to talk to it with knowledge to what Nana will know a lot more about how the number one on the call sheet leads the way for the tone and sets the tone. And I think that's partly what upset the dynamic slightly when Kez left and Seven came in, was that it had been very much Janeway's, no pun intended, vehicle in that sense. But I also agree with what you said, Nana, that because the writers and the actors turned it into a strength. And we were talking just in recent episodes about how sometimes friction can generate good work.
I would say Kate was number one, and I wasn't there. And no one talks about it. It's not like it's an open secret. No one talks about it. But she does talk about the fact, and I do know, she was number one on the call sheet, and usually that comes with its own safety, with its, we have given you this role, take it and do with it what you will. And that wasn't the case with her. She was this hairstyles and clothing, and that's not right, and this isn't right, and you're not right. It's just in constant fiddling, and that it wasn't given to her like it would have been given to a man. Okay, now there you go, do it with it what you will. I could be wrong, and it could be every number one was put under some kind of gun. But usually on a show, they're hired because I know what you do and that's what I want.
Mhm.
So it's very difficult to be number one, to be on a show where you are literally, there have been books written on the fact that sleep deprivation puts your brain in a sort of in the same place as being mentally unstable. So there's that. There's the pressure of being number one. There's the pressure of not being treated as if you're uh, being given the job to do, but still auditioning show after show. It's a lot of what actors go through is not mentally healthy.
Everything you've described, the fatigue, the sense of weight, reflects the character. I'm not saying that's a good thing, and that she should have had to, but it does. And
But how interesting to see what she would have done with it without, because you're using your brain, and your prefrontal cortex is powerful, but not that big. And if a quarter of it is being taken up with, wait a minute, I'm not walking like John Wayne right now, am I? Or, is this sexy enough? Or what do I have to fear over? If all of that was gone, what kind of interesting work would there be? I'm not saying it didn't create something interesting. I'm just saying there's a possibility that if we did it another way,
could have been even interesting in a different way.
Even
could
more
be.
interesting.
Can I actually ask you, related to that, was obviously there was a lot of talk of the hair scrutiny. Now, did you go through, because Kira's hair changed, so I assume you went through something similar.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. Oh my God, yes. A lot.
Which one did you prefer?
I wanted to have no hair. I would have been thrilled. I would have said, you know what? If you want to tattoo my head, cool. Do that. Shave it, tattoo it. I'll be able to grow my hair later. That's fine. But what I hated was Gaffquad. I didn't understand why I had to have a helmet for a head. And
Mhm.
it just was, it's like normal hair was not acceptable. I don't know
Mm.
why. Shave it then. Get rid of it. It was just a pain in the ass. Every time I'm about to go into a scene, someone's doing this with one hair, just over and over and over again. Stop.
Number one, Janeway for me as well. Male or female, it's an incredible character. Tough, decisive, fair, instinctual, a real leader, imperfect, a coffee lover, open to a bit of fun and adventure as well. Cares nothing more in life than her ship and her crew. Able to bend Starfleet rules a little bit. Kate Mulgrew was amazing. The only reason, if I were ranking, which I know we're not technically, I would put Janeway above Kira is because Janeway was the lead of the show. So we actually got much more character development. It was important that she interacted with every character, with every guest star, with every alien, with all of that. She got more of the close-ups, all of that kind of thing. And then we also got more of her with Prodigy, which I'm no expert on, but
Yeah.
it took that character to the next level. But there's just Janeway is an important character in Star Trek. Janeway is an important character in pop culture. Janeway is a important character in feminism. Janeway is an important character in entertainment as something we watch and as a business.
They launched a network off her face, essentially,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So, for those reasons, Janeway would be atop my list. I think it was just also, more importantly, the right actor at the right time. To your point, Rich, Geneviève Bujold, it would not have worked based
No,
on the
you
footage
feel for her. You feel
that
for her.
we
It's not her
saw.
fault. It's just not. She's not cast right, and that
It's not
happens.
her fault, and God bless her for pulling out
Mm.
when she did, because that would have been a debacle for her and for everybody else involved. Not every actor is right for every role or every job. That's what made Kate Mulgrew's performance and the way she not only stepped into the performance, but the responsibility of being number one.
Yes.
To this day, by the way, that continues. Same with you, Nana. I mean, you are a staunch supporter of women, of women in entertainment, of strong characters, strong writing for women. Kate is a voice like that as well. It's really interesting when you watch the conventions and I see, I'm backstage at some of these and I see the reactions from the other actors. You get out there and you command that stage. Kate gets out there and she commands that stage.
And then prepare your ass for smoke blowing because my number one is Kira Nerys.
Wow.
I honestly think you're played one of the best characters in Star Trek. I think you are probably the most fully formed character in Star Trek. I thought the arc was fantastic, full of agency, and you had a beginning, middle, and end. And I think that was fantastic. And I'm someone who tend to focus on the work, not the background stuff. So reading your book was actually a real revelation because I never realized that you felt that your character was under threat and could be cut at any time, because to me it's unthinkable that Deep Space Nine would not have Kira. It's like the original series without Spock. Like, I just can't picture it at all.
Part of the fabric, no question.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
No, blow more smoke.
So I hope I haven't embarrassed you too much.
No, I love that. And Kira was so, can't tell you what she meant to me. But my number one has to be Nichelle Nichols' Uhura. Now, I just recently was watching Where No Man Has Gone Before because it's talking about the ship, trying to decide which first episode, the one that was filmed first or the one that was shown first. I should do on the ship for the staged reading. And she has a scene with Spock, and it's obviously the first one, because this is not Uhura as we come to know her at all. She's flirtatious. She's being used so that we can understand that Spock is, not affected by these kinds of human things. But she's girlish and it's strange, and I go, "Okay, so here's where she didn't know the character." What she grew the character to be, I think, is one of the pillars that we all stand on, because one of the hard things to understand about the tone of Star Trek is you you cannot go show after show and respond to seeing a world blown up, millions of people killed in an emotional, out of control, empathetic way as one of the characters. It's this understanding that there's almost it requires being almost like a soldier, understanding this is what we do, this is the truth of the world, and we must maintain ourselves so that we can act as opposed to collapse and help. And she had such dignity, and that just grew and grew in the role. Even though she didn't have that much to do, she was a lesson to me, I would say, about how you realize the purposefulness of your job on the station, on the ship, and that it's not about you, it's not about how you feel, it's about how you can help. And, so she's my number one.
I don't think you'll get any argument.
Great choice.
Yeah,
Well said.
absolutely.
I felt really bad not having her in my list. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But I think when we initially we were going to do 7 out.
But it's
7
better
out.
that we didn't all have the same people, I think,
Yeah.
Mm.
because that's true. Because really, you said originally a list of 7, and I had 9, and I was like, what? How am I going to? I just didn't know how to. And really, there would have been a bigger list. If you had told me 10, I would have had 15.
Yeah, no, same. I mean, it's like,
And there are characters like Kai Wynn that it didn't even matter that she was a woman.
no.
Those are roles I particularly appreciate,
I do too.
where it doesn't matter the gender of the character. And Kai Wynn is a supreme example of that.
That's right.
So just to our listeners out there, what are your thoughts on our discussions today? Who are your favourite women of Star Trek? Both characters, actors, the whole writers. I mean, we've got people like Jerry Taylor and DC Fontana in the background, all of these wonderful people. Please let us know. All of our details for interacting with us are in the descriptions of the pod. And beyond that, I would like to say a thank you to my co-host as ever, and a very, very special thank you to Nana for spending this time with us and sharing so truthfully and candidly and just brilliantly for us. And otherwise, we'll see you soon beyond the final frontier.
I'm just disappointed to not spend so little time with us, though.
Obviously, I had a horrible time with you 3.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Final Frontier, but join us next episode for a follow-up interview with Nana about her life, career, and Star Trek. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Final Frontier, a Star Trek podcast with Rich Matthews, Ian Spelling, and Toby Weidman. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us on beyondffpod@gmail.com or check us out on social media. You can even join our Patreon at BFF Beyond the Final Frontier. Huge thanks go out to Alex Weidman for the brilliant original music. Please search Alex Weidman Composer on YouTube to hear the full fantastic theme and more. Also thanks goes to award-winning voiceover artist Cissy Jones for our excellent opening monologue. Find out more about her incredible work at cissyjones.com. And of course, last but not least, our brilliant artwork comes from the designer Russell Seal. Discover more of his work on behance.net/Russell Seal. Thanks again, and see you next episode, Beyond the Final Frontier.